everybody. My name is Phil Blancato, CEO and President of Latimer Thalman Asset Management, Chief Market Strategist for Osaic. Welcome to another weekly Market Impact. Here we go again. This week's gonna be a quick and short one. I've been boring you with really long ones lately, so I'll try and keep it easy on you guys this week. First off, I got to start off my weekend. I had a crazy week. I started off in where were they? Texas, Fort Worth, Texas, with a dear friend of mine, Chuck Green, great guy. I got to see some of his clients out there in Fort Worth, people I get to know very well, and great folks in the heartland of the country, folks that are really just special people, and I just get a kick out of being in parts of the country. People love to talk about economics and all things economics. It was great fun. Then I hop over to South Georgia and I go to Valdosta State University where we work with the schools on there. Very proud of my relationship with Valdosta State. Been working with them for a long, long time, and I get to talk to the kids, and I get the chance to really kind of get involved with how the kids are thinking about finance. And for me, it's just a wonderful opportunity. And that I guess there's a part of me in Valdosta, Georgia. And by that, I mean specifically, I get to talk to the kids about finance, careers in finance, but I also get to hear what they're doing. So the investment club at Valdosta got on with, did a presentation for myself and the other board members, the local community leaders in finance, and the kids did a fabulous job. Really great to see the growth of these young people in finance in South Georgia, which it wasn't a normal thing. So kudos to them. Very excited to see how far they've come. And some of these young guys are graduating. The current president's a really fine young man with the vice president. Some of the other kids on the committee, I won't give their names out because I'm not sure they'd want me to, but I guess their first name's Jerry and Zach and the gang. I won't get into it. They're really good young people. Then I got a chance to go to Fernandina High School. Well, they have a little endowment. And that Fernandina High School, I couldn't believe the talent that I've met in their investment club there. Their finance club, Coach Ball is the guy who runs it. Great guy. And Fernandina High School is a little endowment that we help out with, but the talent there, these young minds, really interested in finance. I was so excited to see that. I think being in finance is a wonderful career, and to be around the kids at Valdosta Investment Club. And by the way, what's going on at school? The school's doing great. Valdosta State University is really going well. Great school, really wonderful place for kids to grow and learn. Their enrollment is doing well. They have wonderful athletics. But then the kids in the investment club are super cool. And then this high school, Fernandina High School, my gosh, I was surrounded by these young, powerful minds. It was awesome. It's been invigorating for me. Then I went to Athens, Georgia, and I think some of you know this. I have a little condo there, so when I want to go see my daughters, it's very easy for me to do that. But we have a little problem. The apartment above me flooded out. So that means that one of the reasons why I bought this place was so that when graduation comes, because Luca's graduating soon, she said the clock is winding down. This is her last week of studying, basically. We would use this condo for our friends and family to come and join us, whether it's a football game or in this case, graduation. The apartment above me, the water line busted and got water all over the place. So the walls, the ceiling, the floor washed out. They had to gut the place. So we stayed in a hotel. But I got a chance to see the girls in Athens. It was great fun. And I went to a country concert. Now I'm a freestyle classic disco kind of guy. That's how I grew up. I was a DJ back in the day. One of the reasons why how I made some money and survived. But I have grown. Oh, I like country. So we saw Luke Bryan and Jason Aldean. Jason Aldean was okay. I didn't know him as well. I knew a bunch of Luke Bryan songs. It was a lot of fun. But in Sanford Stadium, which was very fun, really great, great fun. And then I wrapped up the weekend by visiting with a dear friend of mine. And the girls came with me home and we had a wonderful time. And I wrapped up the weekend with a dear friend of mine, Freddie Akers. Freddie Akers is somebody, when you look at the history of Phil Blancato, I'll look back at Freddie Akers and always have a gigantic smile on my face. Him and his wife, Deborah, we got to spend lunch with them. They were kind of my parents. They were the parents for my daughters in Georgia. If something went wrong, they were the first phone call I made. I would make, and actually, Luca got to spend some time with them, which was great throughout her career. And they're just wonderful people. Freddie's one of my favorite people in the world. Really smart, really kind, wonderful family, two beautiful grandkids, great son. But that was my weekend. I was all over the country for the past week. Lots of fun. And my tomatoes are growing strong, by the way. I got back to see my tomatoes. They're about 3 inches tall already. Mother's Day not too far away. I probably would like them more, maybe like 5 or 6 inches. We'll see how this next couple weeks of growth gives. We got cold again here, but anyway, it was a fun, exciting weekend for me, and hopefully you did something fun as well. Quick update this week. Not a ton to talk about. I'm going to leave the shooting aside. That's not the potential assassination again for the third go around. Not my jam. I'll let you all debate that stuff as far as headlines go. But when it comes to the war with Iran, there's not a lot going on. I mean, we clearly are in a scenario where, we are trying to figure out what's next. And what's next is, will the United States go back to the bargaining table? I think that's pretty interesting that we don't really have a resolution as of now. I was looking at the headline of the paper over the weekend, and there's not a lot there. In fact, the one article I read over the weekend was that there's a division in the Iranian, call it sort of cabinetry, parliament, military, is who is the right people to represent them. And it sounds like lately there might even be a coup afoot. The United States has minesweepers there now. Looks like they're going to start allowing some ships to go through that meet certain criteria. Obviously, not Iranian ships, but other ships look like they're going to open up here. I think we're at a point where the market's going to trade sideways. And the reason why it's going to trade sideways is because the reality of the situation is we just don't have enough data to trade anything but. We got a good week of earnings coming out this week. We're going to get a lot of information. We're looking at a week where we'll get quite a bit of news. We're going to see things coming out like ECI, Employee Cost Index. That's one that's really important. I want to know how much people are making. And it's important because as long as wages stay above the rate of inflation, we just have a chance to kind of survive at slightly higher oil. We got past the oil shock, in other words, going from, I don't know, $3 a gallon to $4 a gallon, depending on where you live. So that 25% increase has shown quite impressive resiliency in that the average consumer is still spending. We didn't see any reduction in retail sales. We see most folks are hanging in there and not too concerned about it. Remember, they got a big tax refund, and that's making up for the higher price of gasoline. Now, sentiment in the United States, what people think is going on is not great. We saw sentiment over in Europe also be not great. In the United States at an all-time low or near an all-time low, and the same thing for many of the European countries. Like if you go to get gasoline in Europe, it's going to cost you double what you paid before the war. So, and at that, they're already expensive, loaded with taxes in their gasoline prices. $8 a gallon, $10 a gallon is very common. So, in other words, you have a scenario where U.S. economy is hanging in there quite well because of, at least as of now, what we think is to be higher wages, ECI. Go one further when you look at what's happening in inflation. This week we got the all important PCE number. And why that's such an important number is because for us, when we look at PCE, it's what the federal government cares the most about. Now, you probably missed this headline, but the reality is, I think Kevin Warsh is going to get the nomination after all, which is great news. I was a little worried about that. Finally, the president has dropped the investigation. They're not finding any fraud with it. They spent a whole lot of money, but they're not finding any fraud with it. And as of now, that's dropped. That means Senator Tillis will nominate Kevin Warsh and came out and said he thinks highly of him. He's a good guy and looking forward to him being an excellent economist. So that we're going to check that box. We got that one out of the way. That's a big deal that Warsh is elected. And I think Warsh puts us on the path of probably going to get a rate cut, later this year. Assuming we don't have a scenario where oil goes to 120 or 130 a barrel for a prolonged period of time. But that doesn't seem to be the case. There is one caveat here. We're still in the kind of ebb season of the use of oil. We're using a lot, we use less oil right now, less natural gas, less electricity because we're not cooling our homes yet, at least depending on where you live. And that's certainly a northern hemisphere thing. So that's a bit of a reprieve. But if this continues for the 6 8 weeks, even at north of $100 a barrel, Europe is talking about how they might run out of jet fuel, how higher prices on the European consumer in the Asia Pacific Rim could have an impact. So let's not just whistle past the graveyard. For now, not having a lot of impact, really none at all. But for the long term, let's see. So why PCE matters this week, personal consumption expenditure. We're going to get a real feel for what people are spending, what it's costing them, and whether that it's having an impact. Now, headline PCE won't matter. It's core PCE that matters. What's it cost? Quarter over quarter. That's going to matter year over year. So let's just see. I think it's an interesting week. Not a lot going on. as far as data goes. We'll get some big tech earnings this week. We had some really good bank earnings last week. Company after company came out and put up a really solid earnings. So I think that was a good sign that the economy held in there. Listen, the S&P 500 is up 5% on the year. It's only April. If you just double that from here, and you got another, what, 8 months to do it. It's, yeah, 8 months to do it. Seven months to do it. That's a pretty impressive year. That's a 10% year. That's a good year for markets. Not these, we're so used to 15s and 20s and all these crazy numbers. That's not the normal. 10% is a very normal year. The Nasdaq came roaring back. You know the Nasdaq is now ahead of the S&P. The Nasdaq for just the month of April is up 15%. Bonkers. All the tech names came flying back. The money came roaring back into tech. Some of the earnings have been good. We'll see more earnings this week here, but really quite impressive. Some of the companies I like that are a little boring, like Caterpillar, the Dow's only up 2.93, but the Dow's not the best index to look at. But even that was up 6.32 for the month. Oddly enough, what's still the winner on the year? Small cap stocks up over 12%. But on the week, what was the winner? Was it NASDAQ? Ooh, sorry about that. MSCI International Stocks, EFA, is still up 544. S&P's about to catch international. That's a surprise. We haven't seen that. The big winner, emerging markets. Now, the bond market, kind of boring, up 0.57, nothing too exciting, but certainly doing its job from the idea that you look at what bonds are supposed to do, be a balance to volatility, and they certainly have been that to a great degree. Is it perfect? No, not at all. But I do think when you look at what's happened in the bond market last year, which was a wonderful year, and then this year, so far muted, but I think rates eventually come down. If rates come down, then the prices will go higher. So a couple of fun things there that I liked in the market this week was that we saw a bit of everything do relatively well. One thing I don't love is we started the year with equally weighted S&P 500 doing quite well, the biggest winner. Now the S&P's caught up to that. And that's because we had this tech rally. I just think the tech rally is going to be a kind of a one and done moment here. Come back to prices that we saw before the war. Exactly before the war. But ultimately to grow higher here, we would need incredible tech earnings. I think you're going to get that in places other than Mag 7. Who's going to make the chip? Who's going to supply the electricity? Who's going to create the fiber optic cable? Things like that. So I think this was a return to a scenario where, sure, okay, we had a real bounce back in good companies that were oversold. Does it ultimately mean that we're going to be another tech-driven rally? I don't think so. I don't think that's the case. So let's just see how this goes. All right, so that's a little bit about markets and what's happening in markets. Another couple of headlines I saw and data points I read. You know, wages matter in the United States. And I've read a positive article and a negative article on this. And I've done some research on my own. And what I've come back with, wage growth is picking up a bit, particularly among people who are switching jobs. Now, switchers aren't very high right now, but the acceleration is a bit about a tighter labor market, lightly driven from, things like AI and what's going to do in the labor market, the bill, a slowdown in immigration. So I read one research report that said immigration so far, because we're basically down to zero, right now we're going to bring in about, it looks like 400,000 people. Next year, only 600,000 people, maybe 700,000 for 2027. We need that number to still be around 2 million a year. Now, don't get me wrong. In 2022, it was 3 million. 23, it was 3.5 million. 24, it was 2.8 million. The problem with that is we had lots of folks coming in at a time post-pandemic when we needed them to fill in the labor force, places that people don't want to work. Now that they're out of the labor force and we don't see immigrants coming in, legal or illegal, and you need immigration because you need good demographics to hold the U.S. economy up. What you're seeing is a tighter labor market, less people looking for jobs. We're starting to see an uptick in wages again. Now, look, this is a hot topic. Wages to me are critical. When wages are above the rate of inflation, that tells me that people are going to spend more and host the economy up, push the economy up. Right now in this K-shaped world, the economy really is being driven by the folks who have the most money. That's just the way it is. But ultimately, I think we have a scenario where if wages tick higher, it doesn't have to be that way. Overall, wage growth right now is still at 4%. Inflation, I would argue, is at 2.8. That's a great number. But people switch their job is close to 5. So in a tight labor market, as job switching happens, there's a scenario that could really play out quite well. What it doesn't mean that we'll see a relief in inflation. It probably doesn't mean we'll see a lot of rate cuts. Because if inflation gets stuck around 2.8 to 3%, there's not a lot of reasons to cut rates from here. I still think they cut once or twice and that's it. But what's better? Having higher wages or having, kind of lower wages and lower inflation? I would argue higher wages and slightly higher inflation is much better than lower wages and lower inflation. Why? Because we always have things inflate. And having a bit of inflation inflates the U.S. economy. But if wages are above the rate of inflation, people are going to spend more. Just that simple. Just that simple. So I want to switch gears for a minute and talk about drawdowns. We all get spooked when the market sells off. And it really is kind of goofy how often it happens. It happens a lot. And yet we get totally spooked by it. In just this recovery, the drawdown in this recovery, gold was down 9.8%. It's now positive 7 on the year. Developed markets equity, international stocks, down 3.7, now up almost 6% on the year. Emerging market stocks, they were down almost 13%, now up 1.2% on the year. U.S. stocks were down at one point about 7%, now up about, we'll call it 5%, well, 505 on the S&P 500. So the drawdown was quite significant, but yet the recovery was even better. My point is never panic. I've talked to you so much about this. The panic out there is crazy. I mean, so many people are so worried about what's happening out there that the world is kind of falling apart around them. And I try to convince folks that, if you just stay calm, you can make a lot of money in markets. And I don't think you have to sweat it. I really don't think you have to get all worked up about it. I think it's a matter of, can you ultimately, just stay calm, take advantage of where the market and what it does for you. I think that's powerful. Forgive me, I'm rustling some papers here. I apologize. I'm going to switch gears on one more topic. And the next topic is something I am fascinated by. So I'm a very avid reader. I read papers every day. I read all kinds of research reports. I'm all about these kind of fun things that I see all the time. And one of the things I picked up on, and I'm kind of voraciously looking for data on this stuff, is this, in this thirst for power that we have to have in the United States, is there a way for us to get it? And one of the things I just saw, America's first commercial nuclear power project is in a decade now, just broke ground. There's two of them, in fact. And one backed by Bill Gates, TerraPower, and the other backed by Google, a Google partner, Carios, building one in Wyoming and one in Tennessee. If you get a chance to read this article, it was in the Wall Street Journal on April 23rd. Great piece. Ultimately, it says that, and my favorite thing about this is that you're looking at building a 50 megawatt facility. Are you ready for this? In 40 months. 40 months. And you know what the cost is? $2 billion. Drop in the bucket. When Georgia Power, Southern Company, but Georgia Power specifically built the nuclear power plant, and that's the last one to be built. It's a very good plant. It took them 10 years and $30 billion. Now think about that implication. 10 years and $30 billion versus 2 years, $2 billion in 40 months. Call it, about 3 years. Wow. This is a big deal, everybody. We're on the precipice of real change in how we get power. And I think nuclear is going to be, at its core, green. We can now get uranium from salt water, get it from groundwater. We have ways to make it so that the average nuclear power plant can never become a nuclear accident because the pellets are surrounded by porcelain. Porcelain doesn't burn. But I just think it's fascinating that we have this scenario where how we get our power today is going to change. And if you remember, for those who listen to the podcast, solid state lithium batteries that are being tested and used right now, some of them in production to a small degree, that can get you 1,000 miles of driving power with 5 minutes of charge time. Oh my gosh. If that becomes reality, even half of that, 10 minutes of drive time and 500 miles. Think about what that does to your home. How are you going to basically make your home almost electric free? Cost you no money. Solar panels could charge it in 5 minutes, 10 minutes, whatever. I just think there's a revolution happening in energy. And I don't think we're prepared for it. I think it's what's going to happen is amazing. It's gonna change the way poor people get power, the way countries turn on. not needing natural gas and oil anymore, at least to a lesser degree, using to build things rather than fuel things. I just think it's some cool things happening, and this nuclear power story is just beginning. It really is just beginning. All right. I told you it's going to take it easy on you this week. We're only about 20 minutes in. I'm going to wrap us up this week, real simple. My shout out of the week is an easy one. I'm going to give it to two people, in fairness. I'm going to get the guy's name wrong. Sebastian Sway, I believe that's his name, stunned the running world by running the London Marathon in 1 minute. I'm sorry, 1 hour, 59 minutes, and 30 seconds. Can you believe that? I mean, I just can't believe what I'm reading. I actually saw the highlight last night. But here's what's even more goofy. Another guy named Iliad Kipchoge, if I got that right, finished 10 seconds behind him. 1 hour, 59 minutes, 40 seconds. So in other words, two guys broke the 2 hour barrier. Now, will two guys ever break it again in the same race? That's probably unlikely. But the fact that they did it in these perfect conditions in London and they broke it, the ability of the human body, whether you're in space, you can come back and those folks sound fine, or breaking a 2 hour marathon. That means their average time was 4 minutes and 34 seconds. That means they ran 26 miles in 4 minutes and 34 seconds. Can you wrap your head around that? That is my shout outs of the week. That is amazing. Amazing. I hope they'll come to you from Athens, Georgia at some point soon. My goal is to do a podcast with my daughter, Luca. We'll see how that goes. That will be for her graduation. You heard from Marcella recently. I haven't heard from Luca yet. I can let her help me with a podcast in a couple of weeks to make it fun. I got some cool guests coming on too. Keep an eye out for that. But most importantly, I hope you had a wonderful week. Enjoy spring as things come back to life. I get such a kick out of the way trees just go from nothing one day and 3 days later they explode into bloom. All these beautiful cherry blossom trees, which are now fading a bit by us, are just the color is amazing. And now the dogwoods and the pinks and the whites, it's just such it reminds you that the universe surrounds us. I'm a Catholic. I believe in God. Forgive me if you don't. I'm unapologetic about it. I don't mean to make this about religion. But how can you not believe in something greater than us when you see life come back? The way the world just blossoms to life. Enjoy the longer days. The sun rose at 6 o'clock in New Jersey. It's going to set close to 8 tonight. These are the long, warm summer days. Not really warm yet here, by the way. It's going to be in the 50s all week, but that's okay. Sunny and nice outside. Have a great week, everybody. Thank you very much. Talk to you all real soon. Bye-bye.